just a note that I have started the recording. We will be recording our sessions and making those available later. You are in room A, and we will be starting right now. So let me go ahead and welcome everyone to Top Kit Workshop 2025. We are in our first round of breakout sessions rooms, and you have joined us in room A. We are so happy to have you here. And we have three wonderful presenters for this session, and I will go ahead and turn it over to them for introductions and their presentations. Thank you three so much for your time and expertise. We look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, thank you for having us. So welcome to Foundations of Impactful Teaching, Empowering Educators Across Modalities. My name is Robin Zahrndt. I'm the Director of Teaching Programs at the University of Louisville's Delphi Center of Teaching and Learning. I'll pass it to Aimee for introductions.
Hi, my name's Aimee Greene. I'm the Director of Instructional Design and Technology at the University of Louisville.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caroline Boswell, and I am the Director of Evidence-Driven Inquiry and Impact in the Delphi Center for Teaching and Learning at the University of Louisville.
Right. So we're going to get started here. And to get us started, we'll start with a little Slido. If you can use your phone to scan the QR code up in the corner, or you can go to slido.com and it's 2757449. It'll take you to where you need to go. And what I'd like to do is invite you to share a few words that you would use to describe how your institution develops faculty development programming. Is it very organized? Is it very intentional, decentralized, centralized, based on the interests of individual presenters, based on faculty request, driven by institutional priority? How would you describe how your institution develops faculty development programming? We start with non-existent. All right. Scalable, sustainable, and systematic. We're large, but still need more time for it all. Yeah. There's never enough time to do everything it is that you want to do. You'll see that theme. Give people some time to type here. A mix of everything, decentralized, micro-credential portals, centralized, comes out every Monday with online options, almost overwhelming with so many options, lots of sessions. We have IDs whose sole focus is AI. That's awesome. Colleges offer direct support. Data-driven, based on faculty goals, facilitator interest. Sustained and compassionate, that's wonderful. Definitely something we want to strive for, absolutely. So I'll move over here. I'll leave this open though, so that we can continue to get some hear from folks. Maybe. So to understand a little bit about how the Foundations of Impactful Teaching program, which we call FIT, we don't say Foundations of Impactful Teaching every time, so how the FIT program was created, it is helpful to know a little bit about how the Delphi Center of Teaching and Learning had designed faculty development offerings up until that point. So first, faculty development, like a lot of you mentioned, it wasn't limited to like a single team. There are multiple groups on campus that offer different types of development at different points, but even within the the Delphi Center, we had different teams that were offering faculty development, several different teams that were offering different types of programming. And for at least two of those programs, or two of those unit groups, departments, the teaching and learning team and the instructional design and technology team, they both had some flagship programming that ran very reliably at a set time every semester, had run for quite some time, years and years of history of running this particular programming. And those two offerings for the teaching programs or teaching and learning team, it was the Course Design Institute. For the instructional design team, it was Delphi U. Both of those programs covered things like how you would design a course, how things were put together, learning objectives, course structure, both of them covered a lot of the same topics, and we were actually divided based on the type of modality that we were addressing. So the teaching and learning team were focusing on face-to-face courses exclusively, and the instructional design team was focusing on online courses exclusively. And though they coordinated around things like when are we going to offer these programs so that they don't overlap with one another, there wasn't a lot of direct coordination around what it is that we were going to talk about and what that was. Did we talk about the same topics in a consistent way? It didn't have a high degree of coordination around those types of discussions. So we got a new director in 2023. The Delphi Center got a new director, Dr. Kelvin Thompson. And as you might expect a new director to do, he spent some time looking at the different offerings that were offered through the center and started asking lots of questions. And that was a really good experience for us because we had to think through our answers and talk about why we were doing things the way that we were doing and why we had divided our programming based on modality, even though we knew that for most of the instructors at U of L, they are teaching in both modalities. They teach face-to-face courses, they teach online courses. And through that early process of discovery for Dr. Thompson, it became really apparent that we had some significant overlap in areas of redundancy in our programming. And y'all mentioned there's always so much to do. As we were talking about it, we realized there is so much to do. It doesn't make sense for us to do things that are so similar, both teams to be doing it and just dividing it based on modality. We could do this a little bit differently. Another, and ultimately, Dr. Thompson did challenge us to come together, work together, and put together a single program, which ultimately became the FIT program, to address course design and teaching regardless of the modality that instructors were teaching in. Now, as a backdrop to all of the things that are happening in the center, there were lots of things that were happening at an institutional level that did impact our project. We got a new president, and Dr. Schatzel challenged U of L to start thinking of itself as one large system instead of each academic unit and sometimes other units thinking of themselves as a single system that interacted with other systems, but was essentially very much self-contained, that we were one U of L and that we needed to think about ways to streamline our processes and make things work a little bit more smoothly. We also got a new provost, and he worked with Dr. Thompson to begin putting into place a credentialing requirement for faculty who were designing and teaching online courses. Something that is heavily inspired by Dr. Thompson's time at UCF in the Center for Distributed Learning. So if you are from UCF or familiar with their programming, you may see some overlaps with FIT and how we put it together. And then finally, our new provost and our new president, they announced some significant growth goals for the university in terms of increasing our enrollment by a lot, which meant that as we were thinking about this program and what it was going to be, we needed to be prepared to scale fairly quickly. And so that definitely influenced some of the decisions that we made about this program. So this was, I wouldn't say it's the first time that the different teams worked together, but it was one of the first times that we had worked together on developing new faculty development programming. So we had members from teaching programs, the instructional design and technology team, and the evidence-driven inquiry and impact team. So my team, Aimee's team, and Caroline's team all working together to put together this particular program. And it did take us a lot of time. It took us about a year to develop this program, maybe a little over, from start to finish. And we're actually running it for the first time right now. So we can tell you a little bit about that if you're interested. We spent a lot of time talking together about what we felt faculty needed and the evidence that we had for that. We actually developed some faculty personas, faculty who represented educators at different stages of their teaching careers, full-time lecturers, part-time lecturers, created some personas so that we could start asking questions about what each of these different groups would be looking for and how we could create programming that met all of those needs, and started mapping our existing programming that was run by all of the teams onto those different needs so we could see where there were overlaps, look for gaps, talk about how we would want to fill the gaps. We had some very broad topics. I started to count how many broad topics we started with, and it was well over 50, but then they started to overlap with one another. We refined all of that down to 18 essential skills that we felt that educators would need regardless of modality they were teaching in, and 6 important skills that we thought they would need, and then consolidated those down even further into 7 outcomes for the FIT program, which still honestly feels like quite a lot for a single program, but that is where we are right now. We also started thinking about whether it made sense to think about modality a little bit differently as we were putting together the FIT program. And this is where we started looking at what we were going to do for that credentialing requirement. So faculty would be required to have this evidence that they knew how to base their design and facilitation of online courses in best practice. And we knew that some educators would really want to focus only on the online element, and that we would probably need to offer an online only version of the program for those people. So we created one that is modality inclusive. It addresses face-to-face courses, hybrid or blended courses, and fully online courses. Regardless of what modality you're teaching, you can take that course and it's going to speak and include examples that are very pertinent to all 3 of those different types of courses. After faculty, or while they're in that program, faculty are asked to develop a welcome module and 1 module of content with instructional design support. And we'll talk even more about the instructional design support here in just a little bit. But their goal as they're going through this semester-long program is that they are going to develop a welcome module, so something that can go in our LMS, which is Blackboard Ultra, and 1 content module that they could use in their class, regardless of the modality that they're teaching. And then after the FIT program ends in that next semester, they're going to finish out the development of that course. Now, this is a huge change for U of L because we're essentially asking people to, you're starting almost a year ahead of when your course will be offered, working on the design and putting it together. So we've also had to work with the units to help them with some of their planning about when faculty are going to be teaching, what courses will be offered, and who's going to be teaching those courses. And we provide a stipend to faculty when they're going through that first semester where the content of the program is actually at. And then after they complete development, we provide another stipend to compensate them for their time. The online only has almost all of the exact same topics. That's not significantly different. They also are working on a welcome module and 1 content module, so that's not significantly different. But we don't follow them after the course is ended. They're compensated with a stipend at the end of the semester that the program is offered in. And then we're available certainly to help them continue the development process, but we don't come back, look to see what they've done, and then provide an additional stipend for that. These are the different topics that are included in the FIT program. What they cover individually isn't so as important as just knowing that we did try to do a very holistic look at the entire life cycle of a course. So thinking about how your personal beliefs and values underpin instructional practices, all the way down to the type of data that you could collect to continue iterative course development and looking at how to improve your course over time. This program covers it all. And then each of the modules that are included, we have a text-based lecture that's included. It has lots of links to different examples of what things look like, talks about what things look like in different modalities where that's appropriate. We ask them to complete reflective journals where they're thinking about the content that they've put together and why it's important to their specific course. And then it does provide guidance on where they should be at in terms of working with their assigned consultant, which is the major shift that we made. Everybody who participates in FIT, regardless of whether they're designing an online course, a face-to-face course or a hybrid or blended course, they are assigned to work with an instructional designer from our center who is on Aimee's team, which means that we expanded our instructional design services beyond support for online courses, which is what we had had for many, many years up until that point, and expanded that to include other modalities as well, all in the spirit of improving course quality over time. All right. Take it away, Aimee.
Sorry, I was having trouble getting unmuted there. So our next Slido question, and it should be at the same link as before, but what our question is, what types of courses do instructional designers at your institution support? Are they strictly for online, asynchronous, synchronous, blended, face-to-face, or we don't have any instructional designers? So I'll give you a little bit to answer. And while we're waiting for everyone to answer, we did have a question in the chat that I thought we could address. There was a question, do we make the FIT program available to graduate teaching assistants? And Robin, do you want to explain what's going on there?
Yeah, so they're not like forbidden from taking it, but because we do have limited seats in the programs, we are working with the units to kind of prioritize where who they want to enter and at what point. So we do actually have some graduate assistants that are in FIT, but the units make a very, they have to make a decision that having that person go through the program is going to take one of their seats essentially that's available to them, which means that somebody else isn't going to be able to take it. And if they kind of help make that decision and tell us that, yes, that makes sense for where we are and what we intend to do here, then it is allowed.
We also have a self-pay. We still have Delphi U, which was the training program that Robin talked about that was our past program. That is still available. It's an asynchronous self-paced program. There's no stipend involved, but that is still available. So anyone, even if they can't get a seat and FIT, could go through that content. That, at least for right now, that is how we're handling it. Okay. All right, I'm just looking at these other questions before we go on. The question was, do you have the capacity to hire more IDs now that you're also supporting face-to-face? Not at this moment, maybe in the future, but no, not right now. Okay. All right, so it looks like, oops, I was going to talk about it's okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it looks like, more are just online, blended, but there's some that offering to the other courses also. All right, sorry about that, Robin. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how we modeled the instructional design integration. So basically, it's kind of three different components. So everyone who is in the program is assigned an instructional designer. In the program, we called them educational consultants. And the reason we did that was because in the future, if we do add someone that is, like let's say we add someone to Robin's team who isn't necessarily an instructional designer, but they're, equipped to serve faculty who are teaching face-to-face. We thought if we called them educational consultants, then it's a more generic term. So right now, they are all instructional designers, but maybe in the future, that could change. So everyone's connected to an educational consultant, and that they're really their guide to assist them while they're going through the program to develop that welcome module and an additional module. This is a big change for the instructional design staff. Up to this point, they have mostly done course designs with faculty where the faculty member is giving them content and they're developing modules. This is a big change to just how they're interacting. So it's more of a coach. So that's really the next component is coaching. So the instructional designers or consultants are meeting with the faculty at least 3 times during the program. Some of them are meeting several more times than that, but to talk about their course, help them, with any questions they have, basically. And they're communicating via what we're calling a partnership journal. So we have a journal in Blackboard where they are communicating with each other. They're, the faculty might ask a question there, and then when they have their meeting, they might answer it in the journal, but they might say, I want to talk about this at our meeting. And so that's how the instructional designer is kind of staying in tune with what the direction the faculty member is going. And then at the end of the program, the consultants we have a checklist, and actually all along the program, they're reviewing that checklist with the faculty member with the idea that at the end, they will have completed or met everything on that checklist. The checklist is really about course quality. So we have identified the different components, different things that they need to achieve in their development by the end for those first 2. And then the people in the modality inclusive, they'll use the same checklist when they've done their full development. Okay. So any questions about that? Or Robin or Caroline, do you have anything to add? All right.
Okay, well, so now you have to like rewind like almost an entire year, right? So Aimee and Robin have largely been describing where we are right now in the program. And as Robin had mentioned earlier, we had launched the FIT program this term, right? So we are still in the thick of it. But a year ago, we were working concentratedly, as Robin said, to finalize the build of the online course that is part of the program. And because we had some extra end of the fiscal year funds, we decided that we wanted to incentivize faculty who were invested to provide us some feedback on that course before the official launch of the program, right? So we piloted the modality inclusive course. And we had funds for 30 instructors, 29 actually completed it in total. And at that time, U of L only had 2 modalities. So we had online and in person. We have introduced blended. And so we had some who signed up to look at the course through the lens of the online instruction and design, and some who looked through the lens of in-person. And because we had some time constraints, we could only have people complete half of the modules, right? We wanted to make sure that they were engaged with the module substantively, and they only had a month to complete the program. And so rather than rush them through the course, we said, okay, we're going to split this up. And so half of the participants looked at half of the modules, and there was a mix of modalities in each of those halves, right? So we could get that perspective. Our assessments included a pre-post survey that was measuring things like gains in confidence, knowledge, application. We had end of the module surveys, which were much more direct feedback about a specific module, its cadence, whether or not it was the right amount, whether or not we're hitting the keynotes, whether or not it felt aligned, applicable, all those things. And then we also did some focus groups, which were really interesting because it brought together the groups, again, kind of based on their halves, so that when they were speaking about the modules, it all sounded familiar, but across disciplines, domains, and positions, right? This did include graduate instructors, for example, graduate student TAs, I should say, or at least graduate student instructors, and then, all the way up to full professors. So it was really interesting. And so we have a question for you all. What is your favorite type of assessment data when you're thinking about wanting to hear from program participants? Like, what is your favorite type of assessment data in terms of like using it to feed back into your program? And I'm hoping it shows up as ranking on your screen. If you're a faculty member, feel free to share what you prefer to give, right? Like, what's your preferred mechanism for sharing your perspective? Hey. And this is in the ideal universe. Don't worry about time for analysis. Okay. Right, so long-term impact assessments, yeah, absolutely, but we see a mix here, right? And I think most people would say, where is the option for, mixed method, multi-method approach? That's my favorite, right? And we were lucky that we had the opportunity because it was a small group, right, 30, where we really could explore several different types of assessments. Feel free to move us along. Oh, people are still sharing. Awesome. Thank you all for participating. So what did we learn, right? So one of the reasons we did the kind of multi-approach is that, we wanted to see the through line, right? What was being reinforced across all the different forms of assessment, whether it was what we were doing well or where we could improve. But then, of course, we learned distinct nuances based on the different assessments, which is really important to our practice. So we'll start with the wins. Like, what did we learn that we were really excited to learn? Overall, participants reported increasing confidence in designing and facilitating across both modalities. Not every single gain was statistically significant, and kind of across the board in the pre-post, most of the gains that were statistically significant were for items that relate to online course design, right? So we did find some differences between the faculty who had signed up to look through online lens versus in person. But generally, we were excited about that. Online, we got feedback that generally the modules were really well structured, easy to navigate. So when we were thinking about the kind of changes we might want to make, we didn't really have to go ahead and start from scratch, right? We knew that the structure was there and that we could focus on other issues, whether they related to alignment or content when it came to the modules. And then another thing we were really excited to see, because for us this was experimental, was to what degree did everyone find this applicable to their context, right? We were talking about in-person, online. We really hadn't concentratedly and systemically done that before. And what we heard was, yes, this is applicable in my context, right? So majority, it was like either, depending on the module, it would be like 80% plus, or even 100 plus, 100 saying 100% of the respondents saying, yes, right, this is applicable. And then another thing we were really proud of is that we wanted the course to be research-based, evidence-based, and we wanted to make transparent what was the research base and what we were recommending, but we also wanted it to feel very practical and applicable. And they said, yes, it's applicable. Yes, we can tell it's research-based. So that was a big one too. What we heard that was critical and very useful feedback, right, was that while it felt applicable, it would be great if, right, there were more examples, particularly that relate to my discipline, right? And we all know how challenging that could be, because first of all, we're not experts in every discipline, but we did hear that, and we really thought about how could we maybe more like domain specific examples? How could we integrate like STEM examples, humanities examples, right, to make more transparent what it looks like to implement some of the kind of design or facilitation practices we were recommending. And so we did do that. We had some feedback, particularly from the focus groups, about alignment, right? The degree to which they felt that the artifact was aligned precisely to the objectives as we had articulated them, or the content. And again, this varied by module. One thing in particular that was really interesting and fed into our process was that they felt at times the description of what they needed to do for an assignment didn't always map onto the rubric criteria, right? So that fed into our process as we revised the course. We did have a peer-to-peer review process. We wanted folks to feel engaged, and it was very mixed, the results. Either it was like, I've made a friend for life, they gave the best feedback ever, or it was, they're nice, but ultimately the feedback they provided me was not substantive, or I couldn't even get a hold of them, right? So we did learn a lot from that in particular, and this was something they were very vocal about, and even in the focus groups, right? So that was really interesting. We fed that into our process, and I'll talk about that in a minute. They did request more structured opportunities for reflection, and you heard that we integrated that as Robin was talking about the reflection journals that are a part now of the entire course. So there's that reflection through line, whereas before it was kind of pieced, like sprinkled into the course. And then they also wanted interactive multimedia content. I mean, we had that, but because of time pressures, we didn't have like our own created multimedia content. And so that's something we already knew we wanted to do, and we're continuously working on. And so what did we change and why? So I've already mentioned a few things. We integrated some of those domain specific examples in the few modules where there was some feedback about enhancing course structure or usability. We did that. we did strengthen that alignment. Again, it was only in some modules, but we kept that in mind when we were designing the new kind of, submissions, the modules that people have to submit now, and the checklist that the instructional designers created, right? We kept that feedback in mind as we were building that piece out. I'd already mentioned we integrated the reflective components, the multimedia content, and then we had already intended to integrate the instructional designers, but we used the focus group as an opportunity to ask them about how they would feel about, working very closely with the designer. And what we heard was that they were very excited, right, about this opportunity, but they wanted a designer as coach, not the subject matter expert and designer build, right? So that was very affirming for us because we were already leaning in that direction. And that certainly informed the way that we went forward with that integration. And we now, use that for kind of the social connection activity with well, there is some interactivity with program participants in the course itself, but rather than have the peer engagement process, we're now using the designer process. Is that right, Robin? I'm right about that, right? Okay. I just like, look on your face. I was like, I think that's right. Okay. And so that's that. Happy to answer questions about that. Our plans for moving forward, and Robin and Aimee chime in at any point. So we do obviously want, this is a big change, as Aimee mentioned. We want to assess the integration of the designers as coaches. We are building out, we've built out a survey that has a whole block of questions about this, but we're also interested in potentially thinking about how we can get the designer's perspective on what's working well from them. So we're working on that piece right now. Robin mentioned that we're working to try to scale this program, particularly as we now have this new requirement for online credential if you're teaching online, and Robin's doing a lot of structural work to make that happen. And then we're really leaning forward towards thinking about how we want to measure the impact of this program on student outcomes, right? Because we know from other research, including some people in the room, right, that there is a correlation between the adoption of evidence-based course design practices or facilitation practices and student success outcomes, right? So we're really interested and excited for the opportunity, once we've had more people go through the program, to look at that longitudinally, right? So within the course that was redesigned, whether or not there's a transfer effect into other courses, whether or not there's a cumulative effect as a person engages with additional programs at the Delphi Center. So that's also next for us. So we have a question in the chat.
Yeah, Aimee has a good question about any feedback on templating for design, adapt rather create from scratch. We are doing a few things that speak to that. So one thing we're doing is we are creating a library of multimedia components. So they might be storylines, they might be animations, but we're building them in a way that they could be used by adapted by any instructional designer for a course. So it'll be a library. So when the designers are meeting with the faculty members and they have maybe an interactive they want in their course, the designers could go to that library, pull that multimedia piece and adapt it for that course. So while still doing design work, it scales because they have this library they can pull from and they're not creating from scratch. So that's one great example of something we're putting into place. And one thing we didn't even mention is we've also recently added a videographer, which we didn't have before. And we actually met with several people. I know we met with Sue, and there were several people in the room also a month or so ago to talk about that. But we've added this videographer that when faculty get the credential, they get access to the videographer and the ability to make videos. So that is something that has been added also. So we're excited about that. But the multimedia is a part of that team too, that they're creating that library. I was looking for other questions in the chat.
We can talk about what we've learned so far.
Yeah.
Y'all are catching us right at midterm. So as far as like where we are in things, so the faculty have gone through just about half of the FIT program the first time, and they have had at least one meeting with their educational consultant with the designer, and they should have the second one scheduled. We had purposefully not included a lot of like, you must do this by this exact date, because we were trying to be very flexible and just recognize that the faculty have a lot of different things that they're balancing, and we wanted to try to ensure that the program had enough flexibility that they felt like they could finish it. What we learned at midterm is that we needed more structure in the program. So we're going through and thinking about like, not due dates necessarily, but by this date, you should have this much of the course completed so that faculty can track their own progression. Because there had been a feeling that even if I don't go have the chance to review all of the modules, my designer can tell me everything that I need, which understandably, like you have a expert in the room that you can talk to, but we really, 3 meetings is not going to be everything you need to know. And so we want to make sure that they are allowing some time for that piece. We also had structured it so that there was a reflection journal where they were reflecting on the content in the course. And then there was a separate journal where they were talking to their designer about what they wanted to do with their course. And the faculty were like, they're kind of the same thing to me. I have my reflections, and that kind of leads into what I want to do on my course. And I hate having to put it in both places. So one of the first things that we're doing for the summer offering is we're going to consolidate down into one journal where they reflect on the content of the course and also can communicate with their designer to make that piece feel a little bit more streamlined. Any other questions come in, Aimee?
I like milestones is the terminology. That's a good one. Someone had mentioned that in the chat.
Good deal, good deal. We're hoping it works.
So Aimee asked if we considered polling students on the before and after of a style, how they might perceive it, the value add. You're right, we can be massively creative for it to only hit like a brick. I don't think we have considered that, but good idea.
Have we been integrating some quality assurance standards and rubrics? Yes. Do you want to talk to that, Aimee?
Yeah, I can.
We switched that too.
We did switch that. So until mid-March, we were a Quality Matters institution. We have just left Quality Matters, and we are switching to the OLC Quality Scorecard. Our checklist that we have in the course is loosely based off Quality Matters, very, very loosely. And we're going to transition to doing our course reviews with the OLC Scorecard. The checklist, I don't think will change. Faculty have the ability after they, go through the program, the credential, they've taught the course. We will then do a course review, and they can get what we call Delphi certified, which in the past was basically QM certified without paying the money. It was just internal. Our instructional designers were all certified through QM, and we would do the reviews. So we're in the process of changing that. So it'll be the OLC Quality Scorecard we'll be reviewing by. So yes, another thing we're changing. We're just changing everything.
New president, new provost, change everything.
Yeah. And now we're getting another new provost. So,
Good times.
Good times, yes. So yeah, we have also, we've doubled our instructional designers, definitely doubled them in the past couple of years. We actually have just hired 4 more instructional designers for more of a course support. So we're dividing the instructional design team for course design and course support. So we've definitely increased our instructional design staff a lot.
Another thing that was different with this program compared to how we have administered other programs is that the administration is shared between instructional design and teaching programs with additional support from evidence-driven inquiry and impact. So I handle all of the working with the units, getting things scheduled, helping them prioritize, look at the who needs the credential versus how many spots they have, and help them think through all of those pieces. And a person on my team is the facilitator for the course, and that she answers questions, gives them feedback on their reflection journals, make sure things are marked off as being complete. She can keeps track of the completion rate of the participants that are in the course. And then we together work with Aimee and the entire instructional design and technology team. So everyone who's acting as a consultant for that program, we meet once every 2 weeks, talk about things that have come up, problems that we're seeing, how we'd like to address them, what's the short-term solution versus a long-term solution, which it does present challenges at times. We are co-leading a course together, and so there's all of the complications that come with that, but we're also solving all the problems together and thinking through how it's all going to fit together and what does our long-term look like. And so the relationships within the center, which were always good and collaborative, and we like each other, but we're working very much more collaboratively, which changes the energy within the center and has been a really good byproduct of this particular process.
Absolutely. Yep.
Any other questions we can answer?
Or suggestions? Y'all have given us some great suggestions too.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, so if possible, I noticed that there was a question that was being asked in Whova as well. I just popped in to ask that. I was wondering if that question had been asked here, or should I share that with you guys in Zoom?
We have 5 minutes. Go ahead. Let's see.
Okay, great. So the question was in the Q&A in Whova was, how do you balance technological innovation with foundational teaching principles?
Great question.
Who'd like to take it?
Well, I think one of the things that we talked about that gets at the heart of this is that we transitioned to Blackboard Ultra this year, right? So that added another layer of complication because especially last summer when people were piloting, it was for some of them, they were still new to Ultra, period. And so we did have pretty persistent and consistent conversations about whether the course would involve training on Blackboard Ultra. And with that, I'll pass it to Robin and Aimee, who were the ones who really worked to resolve that question.
Yeah, so we have separate training about how to use Blackboard Ultra. So the FIT program is not teaching them how at all. It is all pedagogy. And then our Ultra trainings are where they're learning the how to use Blackboard. We have an asynchronous online module, and then we have also been running training sessions. Now, we're not running the basic ones, the virtual sessions anymore, but we've transitioned and we're offering some kind of the next steps. We're calling it level up, but level up in your Ultra training. So, but that asynchronous module will always be there, and we'll keep that up to date on the how to use Ultra. So anyone can access that at any time.
And that's one of the things that the person on my team who's facilitating the course, she actually goes and makes sure that everyone has taken that, or at least that they can do specific tasks inside of Ultra. And I will say that we did, when we were challenged to integrate some more disciplinary specific elements to this course as examples, we did integrate examples that included the use of technology and how the concept that was being talked about, how it could be met through technology. So those pieces are there. Now, so if a faculty member wants to do something and is looking for more step-by-step instructions, that's something that they can then bring to their instructional designer during one of those meetings. And several of the designers' meetings have focused on, I was really struck by this. I'd like to use it in my course. Can you help me? Yes, let's think through what that would look like. And that's how they're able to spend those meetings. And those meetings do become prioritized based on what the faculty member is most interested in doing and what they want to kind of dive into with somebody else, which makes those meetings even more valuable for the participants.
And we also offer consultations on using technology just generally. So, people who aren't in FIT, or even the people in FIT, can always schedule a consultation on any specific either tool or problem they're solving in their course that ends up being solved with technology. So that's just a general service we provide. We're not only doing these 3 meetings.
Right. Well, thank you so much. We are 1 minute to spare, but fully loaded with great information and, of course, the good takeaway resources. So, Aimee, Robin, Caroline, thank you so much for your time, expertise, your vulnerability to telling us kind of about the learning and like you said, the ups and downs along the way. We really appreciate it. So thank you so much. We are going to go ahead.